Hello, and on this Alabama adventure, we talk about deer hunting and Bigfoot. As you can see, I got on my camouflage, and I had some of the members ask me when I came in a while ago if I was going hunting, and no, I'm not going hunting today, or if I was going hunting Bigfoot. Well, lately I don't have to hunt Bigfoot. It doesn't seem on some of our videos. It seems like he finds me. But anyway, it's getting close to the 2015 opening hunting season here in Alabama, and what I want to talk to you about tonight is a little something that happened to a friend of mine one time when he was deer hunting. It's been about 2 years ago now, but I want to tell you what happened to him one afternoon while he was deer hunting in, of all places, Whippoorwill Hollow. And if you have watched some of our videos, we have mentioned Whippoorwill Hollow several times. We've had some sightings, and we have seen Bigfoot over there. We've seen a lot of signs over there. But before we do any more, let me tell you about this picture up here that I've got on the wall tonight. Okay, now what I want to tell you about this picture here is I found a picture similar to this in a book one time several years ago, and when I got back home I decided to draw it the best I could, the best I remembered. And what it is in the picture, if you'll notice, is a Native American or a Creek Indian has just killed a deer. And he has his hand over the deer's heart, as you can notice. The deer is still right where it was whenever he shot it down with his bow and arrow. And in the background, you can see an outline of a white deer. That represents the spirit of this deer. What the Indian is doing is he's giving thanks that this deer has given its life so that he can eat and his family can eat and they can live on, even though the deer gave his life to do so. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that real quick before we go to talking about what happened to a friend of mine when he was deer hunting one afternoon. Now, as I said, the story I'm about to tell you happened to a friend of mine. We do not disclose witnesses' identities or members' identities unless they give us okay. And I'm not going to disclose his identity. I'm just going to call him Mac. He will know who he is. And he will certainly know who he is whenever I tell this story that he told me. It was the hunting season of 2010 when this happened in Tallapoosa County, and as I said earlier, in Whippoorwill Hollow. Of course, now he didn't know he was in Whippoorwill Hollow when this encounter took place. But Mac was an all-around sportsman. He enjoyed deer hunting, other type of hunting, all type of sports. What he was going to do on this particular afternoon, it was a cold, rainy winter afternoon, and what he was going to do was just do some stalk hunting. Now, stalk hunting, for those of you who don't know what that is when you take your bow and arrow or your crossbow or your gun and you go into the woods and you find a good place that looks like where a deer have been crossing on one of their trails or where they've been feeding. And what you do is you just find a comfortable place to sit down, and you just sit down in the woods, or maybe you've got a deer stand, which would make it a little more comfortable, and you just wait until late in the afternoon or whatever time of day that the deer pass through there, like feeding or going to the water hole or the creek or just passing through. You wait till one comes along and you pick out the one that you want to harvest or take, and then that's what you do. That's why it's called stalk hunting. You just sit there, you stalk him down, wait till he comes along. But anyway, what was going on, he had found him a good place to sit, and he'd been sitting there for a little while this afternoon. Finally, this deer comes along. It's got a pretty good set of antlers, and so Mac decides that he will take this one. But he raises his rifle up, getting ready to fire. But he watches it as it comes over the hill. He don't want to make any sudden movement to spook the deer off. So what he does, he watches it come down a hill, and it comes through the hollow, and it comes up the other side of the hill, kind of out of sight for a little bit, but he can still hear it walking. It's kind of walking slow, as all bucks are. They're real cautious when they're coming through the woods. And anyway, this deer comes over the top of the hill, and he's sitting there waiting on it, and he's got a bead on it. He wants a good front shoulder shot, so it will be an instant and painless as possible kill. So anyway, the deer is, when it comes over the hill, it's facing him, looking right directly in the direction where he's sitting. So he doesn't move. He just hopes that this deer will turn broadside to where he can get the shot that he would like. So he keeps sitting there waiting, and the deer, sure enough, in just a few moments, turns to one side and walks behind the bush. Well, if it hadn't been behind the bush, he could have went on and made his shot and took the deer right then. But he had to wait till the front shoulder came out from behind the bushes. But anyway, while the deer was standing there, he was feeding on some grass sprouts, or maybe some acorns, or whatever he had found there, maybe some berries on a tree or some leaves on a bush, whatever. But he was feeding, and he had his head down. Then all of a sudden, he perked his head up and his ears too, as if something had caught his attention over on another hill. And he kept standing there looking at it like he was really concerned with it, or so Mac told me. The deer moved its ears from front to back. I guess it was more likely trying to zero in on what had caught its attention. Finally, the deer head went back down on the ground. Whatever it was that he saw must have went out of sight, or he wasn't concerned about it anymore. His head went back on the ground, and he was pulling up the grass sprouts or the acorns or whatever he was eating. And sure enough, as Mac sat there for a little bit longer, sure enough, the deer took another slow step, and his front shoulder came out from behind the bushes. So Mac zeroed in exactly where he wanted to hit the deer. Mac was sitting there, and this deer was taking a couple of slow steps along, and he had put his crosshairs pretty much where he wanted. He needed the deer to take about another step, or maybe a step and a half, and the front shoulder and part of a rib cage would be completely exposed, and he could get a good quick kill shot. Just as the deer began to take that step or step and a half that Mac needed for his perfect shot, whatever had caught the deer's attention to begin with must have moved, or the deer became very frightened. And if you've ever been deer hunting and saw a deer, whenever something really spooks it, how they can just twirl a 180-degree turn just all at once. Well, that's exactly what happened to this deer. Just as he started to pull the trigger, the deer perked up its ears again, and it lunged with a 180-degree turn and started running back in the direction from which it had came. But Mac knew that this deer, once it went out of sight, that he would never see this deer again. So he went on the best he could and took a shot at it. And he knew that he hit it because when he shot, the deer hit the ground. But he didn't hit it where he wanted to in the front shoulder. He had undoubtedly done a stomach shot, or a gut shot, as most people call it. He hadn't hit the deer exactly like he wanted. Anyway, the deer hit the ground, and it twirled around, and it lay there for just a moment, kicking, and it jumped back up and took off running back over the hill that it had just came across. When this happened, Mac jumped up, and he ran as fast as he could through the woods to the location to where the deer went down. And once he got there, he found where the leaves had been all disturbed and tangled up. And he also there found a pretty good size blood spot. So he knew he had hit him pretty well. So anyway, then he began to track the deer as fast as he could down through this holler and back over the hill. Just every few yards he would find several more big drops of bright red blood that showed up very brightly against these brown leaves in the forest right then. So now it was getting on late in the afternoon whenever this happened, and if you've ever done any deer hunting, you know how a deer can run in any direction and can run for miles, especially if it's wounded. And that's what went through Mac's mind. He decided the best thing to do would be to go home. He had a dog that trailed deer very good. It was a dog he'd had for a long time, and what he decided to do was to get out of the woods and get in the truck and go back to his house and pick up this dog. This was a distance of about 6 miles. And as he was on the way home, he met a friend of his in the road, and he immediately called him on his cell phone and told him what had happened, and if he would, to turn around and meet him at his house, and they would pick up the dog and go back and find the deer. So it was just a matter of a few minutes till the men were back in the woods. They had the dog. They parked in the same place where Mac had earlier parked. They turned the dog out on the trail, and he took off barking. They, with their guns, followed the dog the best they could. The dog didn't run very far or for very long, and they heard him bay. And they knew that he had found the deer. So whenever a dog bays, that means he's found what he's looking for, or he's caught it, or usually he has found the deer laying on the ground dead. Whenever the men came running up to where the dog was barking and at what he was supposed to be found, they thought he would be standing right over the deer. But when they got there, he wasn't. He was just barking, they thought, just into the woods. They got to looking around, hoping that they could find the deer real quick before it got dark. They still had some daylight, but they were going to have to get the deer and pull it out of the woods and get back home before dark. They kept looking, and they didn't know what was wrong with the dog. He just kept barking as if he did see the deer. So they went to searching around, and they couldn't find anything. They certainly didn't find the deer right. Now they were both thinking what had happened to this dog, that he had made a mistake, that just stopped in his tracks, just barking at something, and there wasn't a deer there. This was Mac's best trailing dog, and neither one could figure out what it was. So they began looking around the area to see if they could find the deer. The dog just kept barking in the same direction, and they were talking to him, trying to get him to come on. They thought he had got off the trail or something, but he just kept barking at whatever he saw. Well, they searched this area, and in just a few minutes, they finally found out what the dog was barking at. One of them noticed there was a set of antlers sticking out from some pine straw, and this was what the dog had found. He was barking at a set of antlers that was all that you could see, was just a set of antlers sticking out from under some pine straw. Okay, now, what they found, to begin with, the two hind legs were broken about right here, as if something hand had reached along the back of the hind leg and had just snapped it. Both legs were broken about right there. They found claw marks right along here in this front shoulder for just a little ways. Then this place was clear of anything. And right back here in the rib cage were deep claw marks that actually, they said, went inside the rib cage, and it was similar to like fingers. Right back here on the top of this hip was a very large bite wound, and it was a clean wound. There was nothing left inside the bite mark. All the hair, hide, and the flesh was completely gone, and it was about right along here on top of the hip. Maybe what happened, he saw the deer running through the woods, and it was stumbling, or he could tell it was injured in some which way, and he ran up behind it, threw his arms around here, and caught it here in the front shoulder. But by the way, both of these marks were on either side of the deer. So what I think is he was holding it, and the deer was trying to get away, maybe kicking him with its hind legs. So he bit it here to maybe help hold on to it while he could turn it loose here and go back to get its hind legs to break them. Well, that was this episode of Alabama Adventure, Getting Close to Bigfoot. Maybe that's what happened. I'm not sure. That's my opinion on how the deer finally got killed. It was just very odd that something covered this deer up to maybe hide it from view. Maybe Bigfoot thought he was hiding it from Mac, and this other guy covered it up with the pine straw. He didn't have time to get it to where he wanted to put it or something like that. But anyway, I thought it was a very interesting story. Something else I wanted to add about this story. The first person that told me this was Mac's mother. She told me this one day, and then I believe it was that same afternoon, a very good friend of his told me the exact same story. And Mac's family owns some land down around Zana, and also connects to Whippoorwill Hollow and some other places where we have investigated Bigfoot. And Mac's father asked me, had I ever heard that story one evening, and I told him, well, I had heard a little bit of it. Could he repeat it for me, or could he tell it to me? And he told the exact same story as Mac's mother, Mac's friend. All the stories agreed. And then I talked to Mac. Mac then told me where this happened, and it was pretty much in the center of Whippoorwill Hollow, where we, that particular year and previous years and years after it, had done a lot of investigation in that area, just sitting out at night listening. And as I said in one of the other videos, we did come in contact with Bigfoot over there. We did see them in that area. So that's what I believe finally killed the deer. So if Mac had managed to had the deer mounted, he could always said this was one that he and Bigfoot took one cold, rainy winter afternoon in 2010. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Alabama adventure, getting close to Bigfoot. We'll call this one, I guess, Bigfoot and deer hunting. If you did like it, I hope you will give us a like. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. And as I always do, I have my granddaughter Madison's handprint on this mandala, and I would like to say hey to her. I would like to tell you once again that Alabama Bigfoot Society is run completely out of pocket. If you would like to make some type of donation to help us continue what we're doing down here, it would be very much appreciated. And as always, we'll be looking for you next time on the next Alabama adventure, getting close to Bigfoot.